Welcome to the Mischief. I'm Valen, and this is Astral Sorcery. Today we're going to be covering just about everything you can cover with crystals, collector crystals, enhanced structures, celestial crystals, crystal clusters, and we'll end up probably finishing off with an Iridescent Altar. Alright, so as usual, let's try starting off with opening the book. Open it up, and we are in the Constellation chapter yet again. Today we're going to be going through this more or less area here. We've already covered the Starlight infusion and most of the things around here. We still have yet to do a lot of the lenses and stuff, but we're going to be going over a lot of crystals. Lots and lots of crystals. And this is the real heart and soul of getting all of your, I don't know, power for making anything set up, and how you can customize and make your tools and weapons and everything like that even better than they might potentially be able to be normally, I guess. But let's start off with some of the simple stuff here. We're going to start off with making a collector crystal, which, if you're not familiar with them, they're basically these things here. The white little crystals that you'll find underground in these little structures down below, like out in the desert or in the the cold areas. Basically how you can make your own. Now, here's the catch. I'm going to tell you up front that by making one of these things, you cannot change its stats once it's made. So you really want to make sure that once you've got its stats where you want, before you upgrade it into a collector crystal, then you could do that. So just make sure. So, how do you make one of these? You just slap some old rock crystal in here with some stardust, illumination powder, and resonating gems. Done. But it'll also have to be attuned. If you notice here when I look at this one, it says Dissidia Collector Crystal. This one over here is an Evorcio, and I think I even have one down here. That's an Armara Collector Crystal. And yes, there are many different kinds you can have. You can also have them focusing different types. There is so much you can do with crystals. So just grabbing a rock crystal off of here, I've got a couple examples here. Like you are probably already, you should be at least, familiar with the star metal cutting tool and how you can split off things like this into little tiny bits like this one here, a little size 1, you know, and then I could always grow it back up to a size 3, but that's about all I could really do with these before. You can now actually, well, make things a little bit better. So I'm just, rather than just, you know, constantly taking some of the, like, taking all the sliced bits and trying to soak them together into trying to make something, you know, as overpowered as you possibly can make it with an Astral Sorcery crystal. For example, let's grab one of these max level ones. Here you go, a Dissidia Collector Crystal. I'm just going to grab one of these and put it in my inventory, just so that I have it for reference. So this is like the max stats that you might be able to get on it. Not to say that its focus is always going to be Dissidia. It could always be something else, but obviously if you're using a Dissidia Collector Crystal, you probably, for Dissidia reasons, you probably want to have a focus of Dissidia. So, size, purity, shape, collection rate, yeah, it's all important. Basically, it's the amount of Starlight you're going to be getting is going to be the most important effect that it's going to have. The collection rate is how much Starlight it's going to gather. The focus is going to be how much more it gets from the Dissidia constellation when it's in the sky. And it collects Starlight from Dissidia by default because it is a Dissidia attuned collector crystal. So what does that mean? When I have a collector crystal, let's say I've slapped a rock crystal in here. I made one, you know, I just put one in place, etc. Made one up, and pow. I've got myself a collector crystal. I can place it down, I can move it, I can link it to things. I can, you know, therefore use it to give, you know, light on my altar, so I've got this bigger buff. No longer will I be needing to use these lenses to focus into this. Instead, I can rely on these, which is really, really nice. But you don't have the tools and knowledge, if you're following along exactly step by step that I've been doing as of yet, to really make this a lot easier and even better than this version here. What I recommend doing is, instead of just going straight for a collector crystal, is that you start over here and go with crystal clusters. You can then make celestial crystals instead of rock crystals, and then use those to make these blue versions. And then you can also use those in a structure to make them, in my opinion, much better. But to further explain what it means when something is attuned or focused on a specific constellation, in this case, Dissidia. If I give an example here, this one is Evorsio, but this is Evorsio. Evorsio is in the sky, and this is when it is, I think, brightest, actually. Let's check the tome here. Evorsio, you can see it's brightest during a full moon, which is what it is right now. Therefore, it's a full moon. It is an Evorsio-type night. This is Dissidia. Dissidia, if I look at that one here, is dark during that time. It's not its darkest. It could be like one moon phase over and then it'd be its darkest, but it's still not in the sky. If I look through on the telescope, it's not visible. So what this means, let's actually click on here. I have an Iridescent Altar. Don't worry, we'll get to this at the end of the video. But you can see that the Starlight level is very low. It's at the very edge of the inventory. That's just because this altar has potential to store a lot more Starlight in its use. But if I take the Dissidia one and I link it here, you can see that it will get up to about here between the conversion one and the lenses in my inventory. If I unlink this and then I link the Evorsio collector crystal to this altar, you'll see it gets up a full inventory slot farther between the lens and the Domic Resonator in my inventory, therefore giving you a lot more because it is Evorsio and that constellation is in the sky. Does that mean that if it's not the right constellation, you're going to get pathetic crystal, Starlight or anything like that? No. Even if I use like a size 1 Visio crystal and I turn that into a rock or into one of these collector crystals, it's still going to give off a base amount of Starlight. So if you combine that with things like this, an Astral Relay, the height benefit because I'm at Y level 125 now instead of down there I was at Y level 70, as well as any other light sources you might also have being filtered in, like you've got an additional lens giving even more Starlight to an altar, then you could potentially, keep your Starlight really, really high. Even if it's in a star field as well, one of those blue star fields from your resonators, finding that. Any number of those things will give you the biggest increase if you vary the type of Starlight source that you get. These will probably get you the most, though, in a single source. Combine that with at least one of these, and you're going to be doing pretty good. Obviously, height is another thing, but, then at this point, you're getting really, really affected by the amount of Starlight you can get per, single item. So let's continue on with the different things in the constellation. We're going to move on to making crystal clusters, how you can upgrade this before even needing to make a regular white collector crystal. It's better if you actually forego this and you just kind of, use your resources to make something a little bit more effective, like these little pretties right here. So in order to do so, let me go check out where I've got this stuff set up. All right, here we are. Here I have currently a collector crystal. I recommend that if you want, you could just take something really cheap, like this Visio crystal here, and you could make something like that to start with if you really want. It's no real big loss, just a few materials that you'd have to make, and then you can use all of your really good stuff, if you're really strapped for your rock crystals, to start making something much better. Or you can just take all of your really crappy ones and start making better ones anyway. So, if you notice here, I've got two focusing rays, one going into this empty space. I currently have some glass panes around this just to hold in some liquid, because I'm going to be getting a liquid bucket of Starlight here. And we're going to need at least a bit of iron ore, which if you remember, when you focus it with some kind of Starlight, it will create star metal ore. You're going to want to leave that there. You're going to want to then pour this on top, and you're going to want to dump in a few different things. First and foremost, you're going to need some dust. Stardust. Just one piece will do, and any kind of rock crystal. Now, here's the thing. The better the stats on the crystal, like in this case, this one has a size 1, the better off you're going to be. But it doesn't necessarily mean that in all cases. So, like here, I've got two different rock crystals. One of them is just, this one was split off a ton of times. It's just a size 1 Visio crystal. This one here is a size 3 Purity 1, Shape 3, Tool Efficiency 1 Visio crystal. And I have tossed both of these as I'm about to do here. So allow me to grab one of these here. I've just got a regular one, size 3, Shape 2, Ritual Range 1. That's fine. I'm going to toss that in. I'm going to toss this in. And then you're just going to watch, and it will start making some sparkles, and it will eventually turn into a crystal cluster. And there we have it, a crystal cluster. And if you have it focused with Starlight, as well as the star metal ore focused with Starlight, which, yeah, I recommend you do this like at sunset, therefore you get the most amount of time at night as possible, then the better off you're going to be. Now, there are even more effective ways in doing it than just using a celestial collector crystal as well, which is what these blue ones are. You can also use a structure with that, but we'll get to that in a moment. For now, though, just getting these focused, you can see it used up the star metal ore, reverted it back to iron ore, and then it's doing it again. Now, what does this mean? If you don't have this focused and you just make some without it being sat on some kind of ore and it not being focused and stuff like that, one, it will take longer, much longer than you really want it to. And it may take like an entire Minecraft day, might take 2 days, who knows. If you have it so that this is focused and that's not focused, it's actually not that bad. It's just going to take some more time. Now, if you have them both focused, even better, because then this is going to transfer and upgrade and build itself faster. And then this will also end up reverting back to star metal ore so that this can absorb that star metal to upgrade itself. So by upgrading itself, I mean this. Remember this Visio crystal size 1? I used that with a bucket of, liquid starlight as well as some stardust, and it made this. It went from a size 1 Visio crystal to a size 3 Purity 2 Focus Decidia 1 Focus Mineralis 2 crystal, which obviously is cool. It definitely increased those stats without me even having to soak it in any kind of solution, and it added the purity slot on there, which is great. Now here's the other thing though, is that if I already have stats on there, it will keep those and then enhance them further. So if you notice here, Visio crystal of size 3131. Just look at those numbers. I go up here to the new celestial crystal 3132. So it just automatically increased its abilities. Now, this is actually really, really important, because if you have something that already has these kind of stats when they're being made into celestial crystal, then it's only going to try to increase those stats that you have not maxed out. So you've got a better chance of increasing stats from one to the other. But here's the real benefit for just kind of upgrading something that's really cheap like this. This is just a rock crystal that was soaked in some liquid starlight. I slivered it off, soaked it, slivered it off, soaked it, slivered it off, and so on with my star metal cutting tool. And then you could actually toss each of those into these solutions, creating multiple celestial crystals, and then split those off with all of the new properties that they may gain from it. Now remember, by slivering these things off, you may lose some of these properties, so it does have a little bit of loss to it. But this is how you can mass produce your own rock crystals without having to actually make new ones. Because yes, you can actually do this with celestial crystals. You don't have to just use rock crystals. You can toss in a celestial crystal with a liquid starlight bucket and a bit of dust, and you get yourself celestial crystal clusters. And once again, every time you see this thing happening, it is trying to upgrade itself further. So that's just really encouraging. And this just means that it's automated. Once it's to a certain point, then you know that it's going to be ready. And just for lack of the video's sake, it's going to look something like this when it's done. I'm not going to fast forward and sit here for like 10 minutes while it's doing its thing. Instead, I'm just going to show you. It'll have like these white sparkles around it and stuff. And if you have too many sparkles going on around your base, which I understand, see, that can be confusing as well. The easiest way for me to tell if this is done is one of two ways. If you look here, if I put a block next to it, because obviously you're going to need to have something close to it so that you can like fill it in with the liquid starlight, and you don't want that to run anywhere. If I end up doing this here, I can just walk across this, and I don't actually have any step down. If you want to see what the next level down is, because it looks very similar, it's actually going to be, let's get rid of that glass, a small step. You'll notice that the bounding box is actually slightly smaller. You can see that little tiny step down. That's not ready. So you can see that it can be a little bit confusing if you're looking at these things. You're not sure if you're seeing the sparkles or not. Maybe you've got particles, some kind of optifine thing going on, which I don't recommend Optifine with the Astral Sorcery, by the way. But this can be a little bit confusing because you think that it's ready when it gets to this stage, but it doesn't have the glow. That's the other way of testing, is just can you walk across it without any kind of weird step mechanism going on. So there you go. And just from all that talking, you can already see that this one is just one step away from getting bigger. They potentially can end up, you know, just sitting there for a long time at one stage, though. So it can be a little bit disconcerting waiting for these things to happen. So I recommend you just try and focusing on some other things. Maybe try leveling up your perks, or try making some more celestial crystal clusters. Now remember, the better the stats that you're going to have on your collector crystals that are focusing these things, the better off you're going to be. Because if you make a collector crystal out of something that's really pathetic like this, it's not going to give a ton of Starlight, and it might not give you the best results as well. It might also end up taking longer than usual because you're not getting as much Starlight as you can. You can see how quickly this is converting back and forth to Star Metal ore. That's a really good sign. If it takes a while for the Star Metal ore to actually be converted, that's probably meaning that you really should be using a better crystal, because otherwise you're making this take much longer than it really needs to. Alright, so let's say that I've finished and it is ready to go. Well, you can take your Infused Crystal Pick Axe. That's right, I said infused, because in between videos, Hellfire has informed me that he has added a new function that really makes things a lot easier. And I should have included this in my previous episode, but yeah, my timing was a little bit off on that one. So there is a hotkey now for turning on and off certain abilities. By default, it is the key V. And you can see here it says perk and tool abilities are now enabled or disabled. If I have them disabled, this being an Infused Crystal Pickaxe mines in a 3x3 area, which is, you know, like kind of a big area. If I have that disabled, it will only mine in a 1 block area like a normal pick would. That's the bonus of it. So you can turn off the things like your crystal axe or your infused sword, so you don't chop down an entire tree. You can just chop that 1 block that you need. You can do this so you can just kill the 1 cow now instead of killing your entire herd by accident because you sliced. You can dig up 1 block at a time instead of digging an entire seashore. Yeah, very useful. And it does work with some perks. Things like Miner's Delight, placing light sources close to you in caves. Sometimes you're trying to actually make a dark space. That also gets turned off. Other things like arc chaining or lightning arc. Those things that when you hit an enemy and it starts shooting lightning bolts, arcing to nearby enemies, it turns things like that off too. So it definitely will help turn off some of those things that you really need to have turned off when you need to have them turned off. And something else that I completely overlooked in the previous video is that Infused Crystal Pickaxe, not only is it really good for upgrading with infusion, but just right-clicking, you can actually see, if I have things enabled, the nearby ores that are in the area. So let's see, and it's about a 16 block radius. So you know that I've got like some diamonds and some gemstones here and whatnot. If I click, you can see it gives you a general idea that they're over here, therefore allowing you a much easier time of mining and getting to the things that you need. So back up here, let's actually turn off my abilities and mine this up finally. Got myself a little 2 Stardust is usually the default you get back when it is complete, and I got myself a Celestial Crystal. This is just one that I grabbed out of the inventory over here, so it didn't have anything base on it. This is just random. This has got a Focus of Visio, Tool Durability 3, Shape 3, Purity 1. I can split this thing to my heart's content, and then I can re-drop these into more to make more of these. It's really cool how you can just mass produce more rock crystals that way. So what's next? We've talked about how you can make rock crystals into something a bit more effective, namely the celestial crystals. We've talked about collector crystals. We've talked about how you can make celestial collector crystals, which basically you just use the blue ones instead of the white ones. But how can I make this even better? Because I'm finding that during the daytime, the amount of light that I get in the altar is pathetic. Let's turn it to daytime. I click in here. That's not enough for me to do some of the things that I really need to work on. Well, that is where structures come in. There is a structure in here called an Enhanced Celestial Collector structure. Basically, it's this here. It has empty space around the middle, as usual, because it will need a little bit of some liquid starlight. So, as you might think, just by right-clicking on here, you would start building the structure and stuff. As I am in creative, if I sneak right-click, I can just automatically build the structure. And you can see here, it has the starlight in it already. This will allow it, and remember there's a space between the crystal and the block, so you're going to need to go up 2 blocks to place this. But this will basically even out. At nighttime, you'll get, it's kind of like this little pattern of like at nighttime you get a lot of starlight, at daytime you get a little bit of starlight. And this will kind of even it out a little bit. You'll get more starlight from it during the day. So if I look in here, and you can see I've got some starlight. Let's actually turn off some of these things because these things are all just not helping right now. Let's turn all these off. And there we go. So if I break this structure slightly, let's grab one of these and break it so that it doesn't work. You can start seeing that it stopped there. We just have a little bit of starlight. I thought I told you to stop shining. Stop it. There we go. No starlight because it's daytime, and that star is just too bright. So if I click on here, you can see we've got some starlight. It's not enough by itself. I mean, obviously we're still trying to get this little tiny bit from this astral relay, but it's not enough to do anything during the daytime. But if I plunk this down and it makes this structure, it's definitely going to give a big boost of starlight. Now before I was having 2 extra crystals shining in on this thing, but you can see that it definitely increases that. Now if I make this nighttime, let's actually do the same thing again. There we are with a broken structure. You can see it gets all the way up here to the lens with purity 2. Now if I put this down and it reforms the structure, you can see it gives me even more. So this is going to give a base bonus to it. It's also going to give a much bigger bonus during the day. It might not give as much as one could that's focused to a constellation when its constellation is in the sky. The Cydia right now is not actually in the sky, so it's doing pretty good. Pretty darn good, considering that it's just that and one of these and the height. And that's just really darn good in general. But you getting the idea here that the structure itself can really bolster things. Now, if you use this structure to not just focus on here, you can also use it for focusing this, which is really beneficial because then if the sun starts coming up, you don't need to worry about it quite so much. And you can therefore use its benefits of offsetting the daylight cycle to continue making your celestial crystal clusters. All right, so back to nighttime. Let's get over here and we'll actually see that there is some really good, yeah, it's really bright now that it's midnight. That was just dusk before. I wasn't even doing it at midnight. But now that we're here, let's actually get to the very end part of the video. The Iridescent Altar, which isn't that much to do because now you know how to make celestial crystals. It doesn't have to be attuned. It can be, though, if you want to. You can make glass lenses, some sooty marble, bit of rune marble, bit of resonating gems, and just voila, like that. You then make yourself the new structure. Now by right-clicking on here, let's get that in there. We're going to use one of this one here that I just made earlier from the creative menu, and then we can tap with a wand and make our new altar. And there we have it. If I use my wand on it now, which actually just by looking at it, you can see it's red. This is not the right altar setup. It's got this really cool new area over here. Well, if I click on it, it's going to show you that you just need to add on to your existing one. It's not as bad as before. Now you just need a bit of some bricks. Let me actually grab some of these here. I can just put them up here. I don't even need a wand for this kind of stuff. And there's just a little bit more to go from there. Just this circle and you're done. But as I have the option of just going into creative mode, I'm just going to click and make it go. Now you can see here it has like a little starry light effect in the middle. That's not a placement of anything. That just is it's focusing Starlight onto your altar. This is just a focus area. It's just aesthetic. This doesn't mean you need to put anything there. Please don't put something there because it needs to still have access to the sky. In the past, I've tried putting a crystal there thinking that that's where it went. No, you don't need to do that. Just have it off on the side. It actually fits really nicely on the side here of one of these. So what I recommend is to have one of these, and then you could have like one of these on the other 3 sides. And then you just need to have this up in the sky in a blue field. You've got as many maximum benefits as you could really get. Because if you use any of these collector crystals within 8 blocks of each other, they will start cannibalizing each other's starlight source and will not actually give much more of a benefit than if you only had the one. So remember, you need to keep them a bit distant from each other in order for that to not affect each other. But you can see we're getting some pretty good starlight. Got this new stuff. We can put crystals in here, but not if they haven't been attuned. Strangely, I can put this rock crystal in here because it is attuned to Visio, and you get this really cool effect. That's what that is for. There's also some really cool new like recipe mechanics and stuff, but we're going to be covering that in the next chapter. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video on Astral Sorcery. As usual, I'm really enjoying just playing around with all the new stuff that's in this mod. I'm eager to see it in some mod packs. If you guys have been enjoying this series, please be sure to give a like, comment, subscribe, and as always, be sure to come visit us on Twitch, hit that notification bell, and we'll see you next time. Bye!